ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ನಮ್ಮ ರಾಜ್ಯದ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳನ್ನ ನಮ್ಮಂತವರು ಇಲ್ದ್ರೆ ಇನ್ನು ಯಾರೋ ಬಂದು ಪರಿಹರಿಸ್ತಾರೆ ನಂಬೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯವೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. This is something I have said again and again. It is ridiculous to believe that the problems of our society will be solved by somebody else, will come from somewhere else, give all the benefit to us, and then go away. It's never going to happen. Many of you can see the problems of the city all around you. On the way when I was coming over here, there are children begging on the streets. Who is responsible for that? If a 5-year-old child is begging on the streets, who is responsible for that? If a child who is in school, 7th standard nalli iro hudugan, if he is not able to read at 2nd standard level, who is responsible for that? If 1,500 people can be thrown out of their homes and told to live on the street, who is responsible for that? This is the question that we should all be asking. The idea of a great metropolis is to one side, but the idea of a great society should motivate us too. Now, a very popular film doing the rounds both on screens and on BitTorrent is Lincoln. And there's a very interesting scene where he talks at the Gettysburg Address, at the end of the Gettysburg Address. He talks about government for the people, of the people, and by the people. What Mohan said, and what Kiran re-emphasized, we have lost this idea of government by the people. There is notionally government for the people. There is notionally government of the people, that we elect somebody on our behalf. But there isn't really government by the people. What do the people themselves want? And how do we become advocates, not only for what we want, but actual change makers making that happen? If you have a technical problem, and here in Bangalore this is very easy to understand. If you have a technical problem, you put technologists to work on it. If you have a managerial problem, you put managers to work on it. If you have a social problem, who should work on it? It's an interesting question, because the answer is not evident. There isn't an identified class of people who should actually work on a social problem. But that's what we have. And the answer to that question is all of society should work on it. And that's the only way you're ever going to be able to tackle a social problem. And how should we work on this? In our many of you, when you came here, would have seen institutions that are outside as friends of B.PAC and what they're doing. What does One Bengaluru do? What does Imagine Bangalore do? What does Daksh do? What does Smart Vote do? What does Prajalytics do? There is an everyday effort to problem solving, an everyday effort to public problem solving. This is the mentality with which we should approach problem solving in the city. There is something that each of us can do every day, and there is something that can be done with a focus on public problem solving. If we bring that into our focus, a lot of things become possible. B.PAC has put together an agenda for Bangalore that represents what sort of public problem solving we're actually aiming towards. An agenda is a very good thing because it gives you guidance towards what it is that you are trying to achieve. It's certainly possible that other people have other agendas. It's certainly possible that many others have other imaginations of the city. And this is actually a healthy development in all democracies, that each of us knows what it is that we are trying to create through our interventions in society and becomes an advocate, an activist, a supporter, and a political participant in the true sense of the word, that as a citizen you have an entitlement to be a political participant, not merely in institutions of government through representation, but in processes of governance through participation. And these are important distinctions to keep in mind. We believe that beginning with what we do in B.PAC, it's certainly possible for other cities also to respond to this thing. That when Kiran says that we will hold a candle to the rest of the cities in this country, I really think that that's possible. Already there's a set of people from around the country who have reached out to us and say, well, this is very interesting. How can we have one in Patna? How can we have one in Mumbai? How can we have one in Kolkata? And I'm sure the situations are different. But certainly what B.PAC is doing today is unique in one sense in the annals of Indian democracy. For the first time, you have an organization that is willing to stand up and say, we are a political action committee. And this is an important distinction from a lot of the other things that have been tried in the past. that politics is not something that you stay away from or run away from. Politics is the very definition of what it means to actually create the kind of society that you would choose to have or prefer to have. And this is an important embrace. And I'm extremely grateful to all of the people who have led this and brought this to this situation. Mohan, Kiran, Mr. Jairaj, and all of the others in BPAC. I was telling myself, pretty soon this room is going to be full with people that I know, and when somebody walks in, there won't be anybody that isn't known to me. This is the 6th time that I'm speaking at Bangalore International Center, and each time the room seems to be increasingly full of people that I know. I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign. But it's certainly good to see that there is now a network of public problem solving. There are people working on lakes, there are people working on buses, there are people working on waste management. This afternoon, there's going to be a press conference about the solid waste management fair that is going to go on all week in Bangalore, in Freedom Park. Think about that thing. It's a remarkable thing. 2 months ago, I walked all the way from Mandur to Damlur. Mohan joined me for a portion of that walk as well. RK was there. Many others were there. And at that time, it seemed despairing that we as a city have allowed such a crisis to develop. That an entire community, if you go to Mandur, it's inhuman. There's just no other way to describe it. There are 2,000 dogs over there. Have you ever, I can't even imagine that anybody can live next to 2,000 dogs. It's to say that it's inhuman, it's even ridiculous. But in 2 months, we have been able to create in this city the government's agreement to institute a new way of managing solid waste in the city, segregation at source being mandatory, recycling being promoted, industry coming forward to take responsibility for their own campuses, even before the law mandates them to do so, and a new class of entrepreneurs coming up to manage different sections of the waste stream. It's amazing. What it shows is that the collective network power of problem solving that each of us can bring is the answer. You're never going to be able to solve the problems ourselves. And this is something I say a lot. Maybe I'll end with this. BPAC represents a piece of a larger idea that I have, which is that you don't try to scale the solution. You try to scale the number of problem-solving people. In our society, if we're able to scale the number of problem-solving people, many of the things that we see as problems today will go away. And the political intervention in support of that is one step in that. We have 3 cycles of elections coming up. Assembly now, Parliament next year, and the BBMP Corporation election the year after that. It's an extraordinary opportunity for us to together push for an agenda for Bangalore that represents the most progressive that any Indian city can be, and achieve it through political intervention in these 3 cycles of election. If we do this, I'm confident that the face of urban politics in India will change forever. Thank you.